Again, I'm gonna play the intro and let people have time to come in.
Okay.
Let's see. Yeah. So we'll be right back, and we're gonna get started.
All right.
We got Alyse Young in the house from New Zealand, right?
Kia ora from Aotearoa. A nice sunny day in Kirikiri up by the Bay of Islands.
Wow, it looks beautiful out there where you live.
Is that your paradise?
Is that your backyard?
Yes, actually this is the front yard. The backyard is even more amazing.
That's the front yard. My God, my heart goes out to you. You're roughing it in the ascension.
I am totally roughing it, man.
Yeah.
I am so blessed because I'm just following my nose as I do. And I arrived in Kirikiri 5 weeks ago. I knew I had to come up here to live. And trying to find a place to live was like, okay, how do I start even? And as I do, I just work on my alignment. And I was staying with a couple of friends. This is all synchronistic, by the way, because I knew that I had to come to Kirikiri to live about 8 months ago. And so anyway, my friends happened to live on the same street as me in Auckland, North Shore. And they moved up here probably about 4 months ago. And they were in Auckland visiting. And then they said to me, Alyse, when are you moving up to Kirikiri? And I said, well, I'm just waiting for the green light. So then they said, you just have to come and stay with us. Just come and stay with us until you find where you need to be. You need to be in Kirikiri. And I thought, yeah, I do actually. And they have this most beautiful home. It was like moving into a resort. And so I spent about 4 weeks there. And in that time, I'm just feeling the place out and doing my alignment. And of course, they're getting a little bit nervous now because they think I'm moving in with them. And so I'm being bombarded with places to see and stuff like this. And I'm thinking, and that's what I did. I actually followed that up. And in the end, I put my back out. And I had to sit back and think, okay, what's going on? And then I realized it's because I'm not actually being in my alignment, because I know that everything always comes to me.
Yeah.
And so I just sort of said, thank you very much for your help. I'm really grateful, but I have to do it my way. And sometimes it seems like I'm not doing much, but I'm actually working on an inner level to ensure that my vibrations are matching up to where I want to be. So it was really interesting when I answered an ad for this place because the price was right. It was sort of in a line, but they only showed me a picture of the bedroom. And so, part of me is going, okay, let's see what I get for this amount of money. And when I arrived, I was like, oh my God, I have arrived in paradise. It was just so much more than I could have ever imagined. So much more. And I just kept talking about how I was in paradise. I kept calling it paradise. And then when I moved in, the owner said to me, she goes, well, actually, we call this Paradise Valley Glamping because they have glamping site. They have a glamping site with a beautiful pond behind here and a forest.
What's a glamping site? What is that?
So you know they have those really nice bell-shaped tents, and it's really high-end
Oh, I
camping.
got you. I got you. Like glamping
Yeah,
is
so they
a
got
play on camping.
yeah.
Okay, yeah. I got you. Yeah.
And it totally suits my lifestyle. I can, you know, it's like, oh my God, the universe so knows what I love.
Glamorous camping.
Yeah. But yeah, I'm in the house.
Right on. Very
I'm in the
cool.
house. So it's a big step up from Kalalau.
What's Kalalau?
That's the valley in Kauai where I lived for 3 years
Oh,
in a tent.
in a tent. That's right. We talked about that. What part of Kauai
Yes.
was that on? You weren't there when we were there, were you? No.
No, you came well after me.
Yeah. What part of Kauai was that?
So it's on the North Shore. It's on the other side of Polihali.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. It's
Yeah.
way up, way to the west, northwest.
Yeah, you can only get there by boat or you have to trek in. So it's 11-mile hike up and down.
God, 11-mile hike.
Mm.
You had to hike
It's the
11
most
miles to where you lived?
yeah.
And you lived in a tent
That's
for 3 years, right?
yeah.
And so
And
how
I
did
didn't come out of the valley for 18 months. For the first 18 months
were you by yourself or were there other people around?
I walked in by myself,
Yeah.
and then there were some people that lived there. So there were about I think when I went in there was about 8 core people who stayed in the valley. And then, of course, you know, Kalalau is a state park, so there's people coming in and out all the time.
Is that the part of Kauai that's the canyon? No, that's not the part that's the
It's
canyon.
the canyon looks down onto Kalalau.
Oh, okay. So you're in the
Yeah.
okay. Wow.
Yeah.
So I'll just go back to that for a second. So you lived for 18 months. Well, for 18 months you never came out. So what did you do? Well, you're in Kauai. You could have just eaten off of the land, right?
I was living in magic.
Yeah.
That was my total initiation. Living in Kalalau was to understand how magic works and how to live in 5D.
Wow. What years were these?
So I went in about 2009. Yeah.
So you lived off the land by yourself in a tent for 18 months.
Yes.
No porta potties.
Well, they have porta potties, but we dug our own.
So wow, that was so what was the biggest like say 3 takeaways from that experience? Like what 3 things have helped you the most to prepare for, you know, being in 5D?
So when I lived in Melbourne, I struggled being in 3D, being 5D.
Yeah.
And it was really hurting. It was really hurting my soul. And so I just made this plea to Spirit one day. I just sort of said, you know, if I could just live and do what I do, I would just do it totally for free. You know, the whole idea of living in that 3D system was really burning me out on many levels. And so what happened was that I got the call to go and live. Well, actually, the call was to go and live in South America. That's how I heard it. And it took me a little while to figure out it was Kauai that was calling me. And so once I made that decision, because I had frozen shoulder for 3 years because I would not make a move.
Frozen shoulder. Your shoulder was frozen.
And I could only lift my arm about that high. I couldn't do yoga anymore. I was in quite a depressed state, actually. And so once I understood I needed to just leave Australia and go to Kauai, I just said yes to my destiny. Within 2 days, my shoulder completely unfroze. Everything returned to normal. So, you know, I work with the consciousness of dis-ease in the body. And so I was really aware that I was going against my destiny wishes, if you like. And once I said yes to it, because in those 3 years, I was trying to figure out, how do I do this? And I realized that's the multi-dimensional part of us that we have to trust. We don't have to figure it out. We just have to say yes.
Wow. Do you think that the body was giving you the message of where to go? I'm just curious. Do you think it was when you say trust and multidimensionality, are you talking about that the message was coming from the multidimensionality, or how did that work?
I do trust the body. The body will, the body tells you, and you have to listen very carefully. So when I first got the message, you need to leave Australia and you will go to, and then it was like this, South America. So then for the first year, I was trying to understand where in South America do I land, but it didn't feel right. And so then, I was just trying to understand and to push through on a linear way. And as I did that in a linear way, I got more and more sick. And so eventually that's
the doing versus the being that you're talking about.
Yes, that's right. And then I had a master call on me, and I remember just breaking down and crying and saying, I know what I have to do, but I'm just really scared. And he said to me,
go ahead.
Yeah, and he just said to me, he said, it's okay. He said, you just do it in your own time. Yeah. And that was actually a big relief, because I was really pushing myself to figure it out,
Now, was it a master incarnated, or was it a master through third eye or dimension that came to you?
No, it was actually a master incarnated. Yeah.
Okay.
He just happened to visit. He just happened to visit Melbourne.
Wow.
And I was able to get a quick audience with him. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah, I remember that. I remember that story now. So, okay, so you obviously have had an ongoing, I don't want to say high frequency, but definitely higher than, from my experience, than most people had been having with their body 10, 12 years ago. You were already doing it. A lot of people
I've been doing it for a long time.
Yeah. A lot of people are talking about the body communication, communion, connection this year really being louder and louder and louder. Do you have any information on that? Why is that happening?
Well, because, like everyone is saying, the energy, the frequencies are just so much higher now. The veils are so much thinner. Actually 5D energy is already in our atmosphere.
Yeah, of course.
So we can't run away from it. We actually have to face it and embrace it. And so, part of my work is actually assisting people to be able to embrace that with joy and ease.
Mm-hmm.
And it really is like, for me, I learned energy as vibrations and then interpreting it back to feelings and emotions. And so that's how I work with it. I'm always trying to understand what is the consciousness through the feelings that is trapped.
Right.
And once you acknowledge that, then everything opens up.
Yeah. Like your shoulder, that's such a powerful story. Because to me, it feels like things are becoming less personal.
Yes.
So there's less of a human face on the energy that I'm receiving or the information I'm receiving. And I'm starting to look at things, and it's not just me, but you know what I mean? But it's like, I'm starting to see everything as energy, and it kind of takes like the lower vibrational part of emotions out. You almost become like insensitive. Like, you know what I mean? You don't have that same kind of engagement you had as a human from let's say the shadowed part of emotions. So when you say you look at everything in vibration or energy, then you take it in to see what you're feeling and to include the emotions, right?
Well, the thing is, the emotions is the story. And the story is the gravity, which is actually holding you to the pattern, to the conditioning. And so when I'm working with people, they want to tell me their whole story, which is, okay, it has to be honored and acknowledged. But then I say, but what is the feeling that needs to be expressed right now?
I get that from, I think we all kind of get that, in interacting the last few years. But I know I picked up on a lot of that through Morgan's sessions, and just overhearing them or talking to her. And even other practitioners where the people come in, they want to tell the story first, right?
Yes.
And then the practitioner will move it to like, what are you feeling, and what's behind it, and that type of thing. So that makes a lot of sense. And then what you were saying about gravity. Now this is interesting to me. You're using the term gravity and the relationship it has between getting in touch with yourself, so to speak, and the less, it sounds like the less type of power or influence it'll have over you. And I just wonder how that connects to the actual physical relationship we have with gravity. Like as we do more work and gravity has less of hold of us, like in the term you're
Yes,
using, is that going to mean that we're going to be diminishing the presence of space?
exactly.
Yeah.
We're actually moving right into space. Like I listened to Alyse Young the other day.
Mm.
Amazing conversation. Everything that she spoke about really was on point.
Yeah.
And so, like we talk about space, and I remember with one of my teachers, we're sitting there and he goes, "What is space?" And we're all sitting there going, "Is this a trick question?" And so he's asking us, what is space, And then after a while he says, space is love. And I really got that. I really understood what he was saying. So the space that we're working, the space that we're actually aligning to are those values that we put into the space. And this is why I said, when I was looking for a home, I was working on my alignment because I really needed to understand what's it going to feel like. What's the space going to feel like for me that actually resonates with me? And voila, look at this,
Wow.
And so, people who are wanting to live in a space like this, unless they've done their alignment, they'll just keep missing it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. It reminds me of back in the day, like 30 years ago, when I was reading, I read a lot. One of the, genres or whatever that I read about was like self-help, business related type of thing. And there was that same pattern. There was a pattern of like, if you didn't align with wealth, and we could replace that word with anything, then even if you made money, you wouldn't hold the money. The money would come and the money would go, right? So it's very similar to
Same
what
principle.
to me. Yeah, to what you're saying. Yeah. So, and I don't know about you and anyone else, but all I can say is that each day is becoming such a leap from the previous day.
Yes.
That the leap from the day before and the day before that, which was huge and bigger than anything prior to that, is not even close to the one from the new day.
I know.
It's really, really wild and strange, and it's a little bit frightening, but it's almost like it's either this or there's nothing.
Yeah.
Like either keep going, because there is no other choice. We're not going to be allowed to stand still. Does that make sense?
Well, actually, for me, I practice a lot of stillness.
Mm-hmm.
And stillness is important for recalibration.
Yeah.
And what I find is that because I'm so embodied in what I live, that through thought alone, something will just show up.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah. So since the time I moved to Kerikeri, all the doors has just opened gently. And it's been amazing. I mean, even this conversation we're having right now was so synchronistic. When you messaged me last Friday, it was like, oh my gosh, this is really synchronistic,
Yeah, it felt like that to me. I hadn't scheduled it in a while, and I just was doing stuff, and then it just happened, like,
as it does.
I don't know how to explain it, and this is another part of what's happening is the synchronicity or going with the intuition and the instinct and the synchronicity, right? Just go with it. You know what I mean?
So I live in the flow. Everything's about flow for me.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm just finding that more and more planning doesn't really work for me.
No.
And I just have
for anybody. See, that's what I was saying today on one of the other shows. It's like the playing field is even now.
Yes.
It's like you might have been doing this for 20 years, Morgan 20 years, other people. I mean, Pamela Johnson, 1987. I mean, Franco 36 years. But something's changed in that it's almost like you want to say it doesn't matter how we got here, we're here. And
Yes.
when it comes to this relationship with gravity, when it comes to flow, when it comes to getting used to this new environment, there's so many things that are taken off the table. It's just, to me, it's like everybody's got the same thing going for them or something. I can't really put my finger on it, put words to it.
Yeah, very much so. And you know, my workshops are all about helping people just to shift their perspective, to get out of linearity. And that's really scary for a lot of people. It's very, very scary for a lot of people.
Well,
and so, you know, I just say to them, just do it one moment at a time.
Yeah.
You know, just try and focus on today, just this moment. You know, and I do the shamanic journeys because the shamanic journeys is a really simple and powerful way for people to connect with their multidimensional.
Take me through one. Can you? How long is the shamanic? I'm gonna say, can you do like a mini, like a mini, like 5 minute? Like what is that? What does that consist of? Because everybody has. I don't say there's a lot of modalities and processes and stuff, but I'm just curious because, like, you know, people talk about, I go into the Akashic record. I've asked people, and they all describe it differently, but it's the same thing. But to me, the shamanic, just the word shamanic, it just alludes to this mysterious, unknown kind of abyss dimension you enter, and anything goes.
It's
it can
true.
Be, you know, it could be the darkest dark and the lightest light. And the other thing about the shamanic word to me is the humor, like the heyoka. You know what I mean? Yeah.
So when I do a shamanic journey, I actually play the drum, and I do it I follow the North American Indian traditions. Okay. Simply because it's a way of helping people to understand that we are connected to the all that is, to Mother Earth, to Father Sky, to the directions which help us to move in this life, to the elements which make up our life, to the seasons. So all these things are represented within their journey. And I never guide the journey. So I just play the drum for however long the drum will play for. And what it does, it takes people into a deep trance state that they're able to somehow. But what's really different about how I do it is that I always do grounding first. And grounding is simply bringing their personal energy back to their body so that when they have the experience, it's much, much more connected. Yeah. And this is how they actually connect deeper to their soul and to their multidimensional. And so when after the journey, I always ask people to share their experience, because a lot of people will get sensations, visions, whatever's, and they don't really understand what it means. So my assistance is to help them to understand what the message means for them right now. Yeah, and so a lot of people will have this popping that goes on. 1 minute I'm here, next minute I'm over here, and they're saying, I don't even remember how I got there. And then I said, you know, as a multidimensional, we're not bogged down by details. What it is that you just need to be where you are, and there will be a message. There will be a message in that space. And so this is the beauty of doing a shamanic journey in this way.
I like that, the way that sounds, because I talk to a lot of practitioners, and they describe how basically they open their field to the widest point they can, which hopefully is up, say, 100%. And then they invite the client to do it. So then there's this space, this shared space contained, that's as wide open as they're able to create. And it sounds like similar to what you do in preparation. Like you're okay. And then what I like about yours is now all you're doing is drumming. Boom, boom, boom. And so really what that tells me is that multidimensionality that you speak of, it actually delivers the message. right?
Yes.
And there's no hypnosis. There's nothing
No.
wrong with it. But I'm just saying I like that because I feel like what's happening. One of the things that's happening to us is not that the verbalization is going to go away, but there's other things that are nonverbal that are more ancient than the word, that are vibrational, frequency, wavelength patterns, resonance, whatever you want to call it. There are things like that that are becoming more and more of the communicator.
So the reason why I never guide it is because in my experience, every time I'm on a guided meditation or something, I always find that I'm already where they are taking me, and I always have to come back. Like in the past, I would go, and my being's already there, and then
You
the
rush
person's
ahead,
saying, and then I'm going, oh, I have to go back because I must have missed something along the way. So I'm really aware that I don't want to guide them into a journey.
Yeah.
I want them to experience their own journey. So during a shamanic journey, they can either get recalibration and healing, which means they go nowhere, but they will feel a lot of energetic pulses going on in the body, okay? Or they will go to the upper world and they will meet with their spirit guides, or they will go to the underworld and they'll meet with their animal guides. And so it's really colorful. And it's so funny because people will say to me, oh, not much happened. And then they'll go this and this and this and this. And I'll go, oh, really? Not much happened in that 15, 20 minutes? Wow, that was quite a lot, I thought, And I'm not really sure what they're expecting, to be honest. But in the end, when they understand their message, so when I'm listening to their sharing, I'm actually listening to their feelings.
Mm-hmm.
So what you said before about, people always want to tell you their story. And what it is because we have grown up in a society, in a culture where nobody is actually receiving one another. Mm-hmm. We're just talking at each other.
Yeah. I mean, we're not present with ourselves, so how can we be present with anyone else, right?
And so therefore, it's kind of like when we can actually be very present and acknowledge their experience. And when I ask people to share at the end, I say that because the sharing part of it is their expression of what they experienced here and now. Yeah. And when they can acknowledge that and express it, it activates the codes within them.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's very true. I'm a big believer in the sharing thing. And it also, well, it presents code to the observer as well as the projector. Yes. And it's always an equal energy exchange. Now, you brought up, I was saying how we can't stand still, meaning that the universe is always in motion. And it seems like what's happening is we're being pushed. We're not being allowed to. I mean, if we stand still, so to speak, things get loud, meaning we're not looking at something, we're not present with something, we're not acknowledging something or someone or whatever, it gets louder and louder. And so we're being forced. Urged, we're being forced to move. And I really like what you said about the stillness, the importance of the stillness, which isn't necessarily silence, because it could be music, it could be a drum, it could be nature, which has noise. But what really kind of triggered me on that was, if you look back at, let's just say the books we were able to engage ourselves with through the years, or different practices like yoga, like you were talking about, there was a stillness quality that was in the sacred text that go within, meditation, Buddha under the Bodhi tree and all that stuff. But now it seems like, especially the last 3 months or so, more and more people are going into isolation and being alone, and which obviously must have started last year with the quarantines and people not being able to leave, that they're spending more time, like we're being supported to be in that stillness. And that really, if you think about it, when's the last time the entire world was at this level of stillness?
I know. Well, that was the changing point, wasn't it? Where everybody had to stop. Yeah. Everybody had to stop and reassess. That's why those people who are in isolation when they find it very, very difficult to be still, because there's a lot of stuff inside of them that actually needs to be acknowledged and addressed.
Yeah.
And for those of us who are already doing the work, the lockdown was actually a blessing in disguise.
Yeah.
It
didn't change anything. That's what I think is funny. Because for empaths, they're like, oh, we got to be home all the time. Empaths are like, oh, we've been doing that for years.
Yeah. But it was a way for the rest of the population to catch up.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So I still, even though it's happening, it's a true rude awakening for a lot of people.
Yeah. And you could probably speak to this as well, because of your experience and connection for so many years. So, in talking to Franco, when we were in Sedona, I can't remember what was said privately and what was said publicly and what I could say and can't say, right? I just have to be careful. But so it's something along the lines, and he's not the only one, that there is support coming from external aspects of us, if we want to describe it in a human way. Part of what he was telling me was in regard to the speed and the acceleration over especially the last year and a half. And what he was saying was, in summary, was that our brothers and sisters, brother and sister souls, or aspects, whatever you want to call it, that are assisting us have intervened. And as an example, for instance, the virus came out. And of course, there's always yin and yang working against each other, or however you want to put that, for each other. And that it had been designed to take out a lot of people. Now, I'm not saying this is true or not true. I'm just giving an example. And our sister souls said, okay, we're going to let this thing go, but it's only going to go so far. So in other words, they were intervening, and I'm sure we have something to do with that.
Yes.
And so the end result of it was, and this is what I wanted to ask you about, is that he was saying that the choice we had all decided, we all have a voice there, we all have a vote there, that we want this to speed up, that type of thing. And that basically what in human terms, what's happening, or what will happen, I guess both, is that we are actually going to go through like 200 years of evolution in a very short period of time.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
So my question to you is, how much influence does our brothers, sisters, souls, do they have? What do you know about their involvement and how it might work? And what do you see on the other side of this period of time? Like, where will we be in this period that would normally take 200 years? I know that's several questions in one, but starting with what do you know about the relationship between what I would refer to as our brother, sister souls, or our other aspects, and their involvement and how that might work?
Well, I'm of the understanding that our soul comes in with a specific agenda and purpose. And I sort of feel like, I think when people actually connect back to their soul purpose and understand what that actually means, it actually makes sense in a bigger picture. So we can't judge what one soul is doing and what another soul is doing.
Yeah.
It was really interesting. I'm just going to digress a little bit. But when I was living in Kalalau, people would come in, and there was one lady I bumped into who was suffering terribly because her mother had committed suicide. And so we invited her back to our camp, and we sat with her and listened. And at that time, my partner at the time, T, he channeled her mother. And it was so amazing because she was coming through, and she was saying to her that she was so glad that she made the decision to cross over at the time that she did, because she was just suffering. She did not see and could not find a way out in her 3D-ness. Right. But now that she had crossed over, she was also learning and growing in a new way. And so for me, that was a revelation in itself, because somehow we make suicide as being bad and wrong if people are choosing that. But I came to understand that actually the soul has chosen it.
Yeah. It was a multi-dimensional choice, is what you're
Yes.
saying.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's so, I don't want to say complicated, but like everything else, it just, the dynamics of it changed the next day. Like I can
Yes.
see where that would have been, without judgment, where that stood, say 20 years ago and where it stands today. Because, if you look at what Franco talks about and some other people have alluded to and talked about in different ways, is that, and some of this has been talked about for years, in terms of like when this time comes, a lot of people are going to transition.
Well, the thing is,
So,
Todd, it's about choice.
mm,
It comes back to understanding we come in as a human being in 3D. We're here to experience life, to express life for our soul expansion, to remember the divinity that we are, to bring heaven on earth, so to speak. These are all platitudes. But at the end of the day, we are born with choice.
yeah.
And until we understand how to exercise that choice to move us back into sovereignty, our mastery, this is what humanity is growing through right now.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's every choice, isn't it? I mean, it really
Yes.
is. I mean, like for instance,
Yeah.
if I walk outside and I have a piece of gum and I throw the wrapper on the ground, if somebody else walks outside and has a piece of gum and throws a wrapper on the ground. So there's a couple things working here. One is, what's my mindset? I might be of a mindset, and I'm not, I'm just making an example.
Mm-hmm.
I might be of a mindset that everything is the same and I return this gum wrapper to the earth.
Mm.
And I'm energetically cool, Somebody else might walk out and go, I know I shouldn't do this, but I'm going to throw it on the ground. And that's disrespectful to Mother Earth, or, some type of counter type of ascension frequency, like a lower vibrational, because what you're saying is it is all right here. And so these decisions we make, we might think it could be something else. It could have to do with what I eat and what you eat. And your spirit, your soul lineage, your human lineage, whatever it is, and your feeling in your body says, I need to eat just vegetables. And I might say, today I need to eat a hamburger. The energy can be the same. To your point earlier, everybody's is different.
Yes.
You can't really judge anyone else because you really don't know what the hell's going on with them. You know what I mean? Yeah.
I remember when I was a little girl, I might have been about 9 or 10. And I remember someone making that comment about, I'd rather be them. I'd rather be them. I'd rather wear their shoes.
Mm-hmm.
And it was really interesting because when they said that, my immediate response was, oh, I don't think I want to wear their shoes. You just don't know where they've walked. You don't know what their life is like. And, as a small child, you sort of think, well, that was quite profound,
Yeah. Exactly.
And, yeah. And so, so what we're talking about is we've moved out of slave consciousness.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we're in 5D, but a lot of people are still living in slave consciousness.
Well, the programs,
because of the system.
I mean, they're so multi layered.
Yes.
You think of multidimensionality and you think of, my dragon and my Syrian and my connection to Jesus and, all these different things, elementals, but the human itself, this is what really intrigues me. And that's what I always bug Franco about. What does it mean, the human soul? What is different about the human soul and the multidimensional soul? What's the relationship? How does that work? But there's something about the multidimensionality of the human, like the experiences, the lives, the living Akashic. I sit down with you, you sit down with me. There's things I'm picking up consciously and unconsciously through you, and vice versa, right? So there's all the body, the emotional, the mental, the light body. There's all these aspects that to me are, I guess in a way, they're a copy of the multi-dimensionality we feel like is up here, right?
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
But there seems to be like the same flower of life makeup, and it's like these human facets, this human multidimensionality pieces, all have like, just like the ones up there. The Syrian is work ethic oriented. The dragons are fire, let's clean it up oriented, and so they all have like their specialties. And now the human part of us, kind of all coming together and aligning. And I guess that makes sense with what you're saying, where we're at now, out of slave consciousness.
Well, when we're born multidimensional. And then through conditioning and through our cultures, all of that, we start to lose it because nobody's actually supporting those thought forms or those feelings.
Yeah.
When you watch small children, they're actually still very multidimensional.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
They're very pure in it. And this is why I do a lot of the inner child work, because when you can take someone back to the essence of who they are, it sparks the remembrance.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't learn shamanism, but because I was doing a lot of work with my inner child, it brought me into my inner shaman.
Yeah.
And so it came through quite naturally. And this is what I assist people with, is moving into their multidimensional in a gentle, joyful way of a remembrance.
Yeah. I don't know why I have this impression of this summer, which would, I guess, be your winter, right?
Yes, we're deep in our winter right now.
Yeah, I can tell. Oh my God, my heart bleeds for you. But there's, I don't know, this period, this 2 or 3 months, like June, July, August, like I just feel like the Band-Aid is going to be ripped off. Like, you know what I mean? It's just going to be like, whoosh.
Yep.
And to me, this is just like my feeling today, up to this point, where everything is happened, is that no matter what goes on, like let's say in the movie script or the world or family or relation, whatever, that the level of transformation and the intensity of the transformation and the reality of the transformation within ourselves is going to be so huge, or is so huge, that we won't even have time to think about that other stuff.
That's why it's so fast.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
And
I think that's part of the reason people are being, let's say the atmosphere has become one where there's a lot of solitude and isolation and self-introspection. That would fall in line with the rapid evolution that Franco and others have talked about that will happen in a short period of time. It just makes sense.
Yes.
Because it's embodiment, and without embodiment, there doesn't seem to be real progress. You know what I mean?
It's all about embodiment these next 2 years. Yeah. All about embodiment.
So is that this year, next year, do you feel? Or 20?
Yeah.
Okay. See, that falls in line again with what a lot of people, well, I say a lot, some people that have had an expanded presence in our communities talking about 2023 being kind of the new beginning, right?
Sorry, I had to plug you back in.
That's fine. No, I was just saying that goes in line with what you were saying, goes in line with what some people that have had an expanded presence in our communities have been saying, which is that 2023 is going to be kind of like the coming out party, and that over the next year and a half, we've got a lot of stuff coming up to be cleared, or however you want to put it, right?
Yep. And to be honest, I feel it's actually a lot gentler than it's ever been.
Yeah.
We're moving through things so quickly right now.
Yeah.
And it really is, it's become so simple now, We've got to let go of this idea of processing per se, I mean, that's very 70s. But it really is just acknowledging, being present to it, to allow it. And before you know it, you're through it.
Yeah. Well,
it's the judgments that will keep you there.
Yeah, that's the big one.
Yeah.
That's a big one. That's one thing I've been very conscious of. And again, a lot of this stuff, like to your point, is happening organically. The intensity can be really, really extreme, but it doesn't last very long, and you
Yes.
come out of it. But one of the things that's kind of I've been conscious of, like I'm literally saying to myself, I can look at this imbalance within myself, or I can look at this imbalance. Let's say it's a habit. I've dropped a couple of habits. Some people might call addictions. It's the same type of energy, whether it's whatever it
Yes.
is.
Yeah.
And I look at it and go, okay, I know that I'm clearing this. I know that every day I'm aligning this more and more, and I'm not going to judge myself for eating a cheeseburger today. You know what I mean? Or whatever it is, I'm giving myself, I'm looking at myself without judgment, and I can't be the only one. And like everything else that's happened, especially in the last year and a half, it feels like we're getting a lot of support. Like like you said earlier, it's not as hard as it used to be.
No, it's not hard. It's just different. It's just different, and it's the perspective,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's. I keep, I mean, the words are futile. You know what I mean? You can say what we're talking about all you want, but it just seems so new. I guess is how I would put it. It's so new. It's almost like there's, people talk about two Earths, right? Some people they'll split. They'll still be there, but they're at different frequencies, so one can't see the other, so to speak. To me, it feels like there's a bunch of new Earths bouncing around the globe in this old Earth, right? And they're almost like impervious to, every day they become more and more impervious because they're impenetrable from the old Earth or the old frequency. Yeah. I picture it more like that, But
well, the thing is, it's kind of like this, it's like we're the new energy holders now, and we're creating a space, the new Earth. And as more and more people create that, it gets wider and wider, more expansive. Now, 3D will always be there because it has to be.
Yeah.
It has to be for those souls who need to experience that duality, okay?
Yeah.
So 3D will always be there. And I say to people, don't focus on 3D.
Yeah.
Just focus on what it is that you wish to create, because as this space becomes bigger and bigger and bigger, it will later on just encompass and bring up 3D.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. And here's the thing too, is like, what does that look like? If, let's say that's a reality, let's say that, and it would make sense because that's how the other dimensions are. We know Atlantis is right there, and Lemuria is right there, and whatever, Avalon and Mu, and they're right there, but they're on a different frequency.
The difference is you have to be grounded. You have to be embodied, because you're already in these dimensions. But if you cannot bring it to the earth plane, then the 3D will always be 3D, which is what has been happening the last 200 years. There wasn't enough embodiment of the teachings, So as we become more and more embodied, we are anchoring to the earth and increasing her vibrations in that way.
Yeah. Well,
because it's not split. It's a soup.
Exactly.
And we can come and go into these different dimensions as and when we need to bring the wisdom through. And the wisdom comes through our being.
Yeah, true. We're conduits.
Yes.
We're clear channels, and that's where you get the. So like I'm with you on this, and I feel like 3D is 3D. I mean, put it that way. And what does that mean? Well,
that's what the Earth is. The Earth is 3D.
Yeah.
And it's specifically like the gravity is there to help us to experience the duality.
Right. And I mean, in terms of accessing on a mass scale, changing the experience on the earth, part of that to me would be us starting to see, touch, and smell and hear these other dimensions that are right next to us.
Yes.
And And so to what that tells me, because I'm hearing stuff and I can't quite put my finger on it, which is you have to let go of it. So that means time and space. That means conceptions and beliefs. That
Mm.
means, am I looking at a forest in my backyard, or am I looking at a little universe with a fairy kingdom over here and, Sasquatch and the elders over here in the trees? I mean, what am I really looking at? What am I looking at when I look at you? Why did I have a show 2 days ago and the girl came on and spoke some type of galactic thing for 30 minutes and everybody said, don't turn her off because we're getting the message. You see what I
Mm-mm-mm.
mean? It's like, what did
Yes.
we really see? Did we see a show where the girl was having a technical difficulty, or did we not? And the difference is what we go with, right?
And you know what, Todd, you're right, because it's coming back to our sensory being. We are sensitive beings. We have to learn how to understand our compass through our senses. And like you say, like for a lot of clairvoyant people, they will see a lot of things, but if they're not in touch with their true feelings, then the message can be quite skewed.
Yeah.
All
And I
right.
think, yeah. And I think another thing that's happening too, I've noticed this year from a lot of people that I know and just interacting, is that even for the people that have been strongly connected and pulling down powerful downloads and transmissions, they're starting to let go of the story of the story, right? They're
Mm,
starting to let go of, oh wow. And it's more like you said, embodying and landing and
mm,
anchoring. And they're
mm-hmm.
going, that was just to get me here to this state of awareness. Like not that I don't want to like, you know, just act like it never existed, but it's basically been code and information and a method to get here. And now let's focus on what we do with this information, right? And what we create.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, yeah. So, you know, for people who have a lot of mind stuff going on, one thing I will remind people is that the mind is limited.
Mm-hmm.
The mind is only storing the information that it's already experienced. But when we drop into the heart and to our intuition, that is where the expansion comes from. It comes from the new experiences. But our mind is always on top of us saying, danger, Will Robinson. I can't
Yeah.
let you in.
Well, see,
All
that's
hell
what,
broke loose.
yeah,
I'm in charge. Listen to
yeah.
me. I know the way.
And
And
it's,
this is where we have
yeah,
to learn to really drop.
yeah,
Like, you know, for people, it's like to just breathe and drop, breathe and drop,
yeah,
breathe and drop. And then ask yourself, how do I really feel?
yeah.
Because what you're saying is that I'm sensing something, but my mind can't make sense of what I'm
Yes.
actually seeing. But if
Yes.
I drop into my being, I can sense this feels like love, this feels like joy, this feels like whatever it might be.
Yeah. So I went to Sedona for Soulogy Fest, and so I got to see a lot of people face to face, and I was amazed at the number of people that had made, and again, like Morgan and I just got a download. She used to go to Australia. I'm going to be here,
Yes.
and a lot of stuff came with that. So it was something like that. So the humans, Todd and Morgan, took 2.5 weeks trying to align and accept and allow what we knew from the whole multidimensionality of the soul, what we needed to do. We didn't have to understand all the details. We weren't, you know what I mean? We went through
Yes.
the whole quote unquote process, which is really
Mm.
becoming less of a process to your point. But what I was getting at is I was amazed at the number of people that were in the same type of energy vortex that her and I were. And it was very widespread. And it was, to me, you could describe it like, well, kind of like I just said, that people were telling me, I don't know why I'm here. I don't know why I moved here. I don't know why I sold my house. I don't know why I bought a caravan. I don't know why this, and that. I think I'm going to move here. I think I'm going to move there. I mean, I've talked to people since I've left there, two of them for sure, and they're like all over the place. They were
Mm.
like in Arizona, now they're up in Montana, now they're going over here. And I mean, that to me is something that's happening a lot. And if
Yes.
it's happening a lot, that's embodiment, which
Mm-hmm.
that means at an energetic level, it's freaking huge. Like, what does that mean? Like, that's like, wow, that's going to alter our whole existence. People.
This is the collective wave.
Hmm.
This is the collective wave of consciousness that is going into the ascension, and we're all part of this. So those of us who are travelers, we go to different places to ignite that, to activate that space.
Yeah, yeah, that's right, man.
It's funny. I went to Sedona.
You did,
and this is back in 1980.
Good gosh. Were you
Oh,
woke then?
sorry. No, it would have been, sorry, beg your pardon. It was about 2005, I think. 2004, 2005.
All right.
And it was really funny because I got the message to go to Sedona. And it was going to be during their height of summer. And so I decided I'm going a month earlier because I don't like the heat. So when I got to Sedona, I was planning to only be there 10 days. I ended up being there a month, because the whole time it was like, I'm here for something, but I don't know what it is. And I just felt like I was being kept there until such time. And then like 3 days before I'm about to leave, I synchronistically, meet up with these people, and they said, you have to come to this meeting with the children of the sun. And I'm going, oh no, I'm leaving, I'm going to miss it. And they go, no, you're meant to be there. And so it was really interesting. If I had listened to my guidance in the first place, I would have been there in the time that, my spirit guides was telling me. But because, I was being a smarty pants and thinking, oh, I don't have to be there. But anyway, it was a really, really interesting time in Sedona. And I can see that it's just a place full of vortices.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I could see that there were a lot of people that were very, very ungrounded. And one of the things that I felt, actually, there were a lot of people that were probably living there that probably didn't need to live there that long, because, like the Native American Indians, they move around.
Yeah.
And Sedona is a place of medicinal healing.
Yeah.
It's a space for that.
I've got some friends that are Native over there, and one, I don't remember which one it was telling me that even back in the day when the Native Americans were the only thing out there, right, that Sedona was not a place they lived.
Exactly.
It was only a place that you would go for a shamanic journey or healing or a vision quest, or it was a place, and they would go there specifically for that. Yeah.
Yes, because if you live there too long, you get spun out. You just keep spinning. Especially if you're not doing your work as well, because it's really intense to live in places where there's such high, energy vortices.
Yeah, I know people that work in Sedona or West Sedona, and they live outside of Sedona, right?
And I have to live outside of Sedona.
I know people that, like what you're talking about, like even that they just as quick as they were moved to Sedona, they get moved out.
Yes.
And then I know a couple of people, like I think of one couple, a really cool couple, and they've been there 10 years. Now they met in Sedona, they united in Sedona, and they're obviously doing good work in Sedona. But that's kind of the exception. I mean, you're right.
Well, they're probably keeping on top of themselves, which is
they are.
great.
Yeah, they're very.
They're probably more grounded too.
Yeah, true. Yeah, true.
Yeah.
They say to live in the Black Hills of South Dakota, you must be holy or crazy. That's like the biggest pull in America where I've always wanted to go and I never have. Black Hills.
You don't need to. You don't need to.
Well, if I want to, I can go here, right? I can just go.
Exactly. Yeah.
So, I mean, I'm curious as to what you think is how fast or slow do you see the substantial the substantial disintegration of gravity, space, time, like in our existence, like in our daily experience? Do you think it's within arm's reach?
It is within arm's reach, and it's going to depend on how people choose in this next 2 years. It's not going to be immediate, but I feel that for those who are already living an alternate way in 5D, it's not going to matter. It's not going to affect us.
Yeah, that's one of those questions you answer right where you're asking it. I kind of got the answer. But it's along those lines of like, because of what's happening, you won't even be aware of something like
No,
that.
because it's not our reality. That's the truth.
It's like
You know,
forgiveness.
we're already this is my main message to people, is that when you understand that you are living in creator energy, that you are a creator, then you will always create the reality that you're aligning to.
Yeah.
And when we do that, then there's going to be less buildings, there's going to be less traffic, there's going to be less of all these other things, because we're truly tapping into our multidimensional.
Yeah.
Because I remember one time I was living on this very energetic land called Kawapurapura in Auckland, and it's a yoga retreat center. But it also has, it also has it's got vortices and portals on the land. And I remember I assisted in a workshop one day with the interpretation of, because the guy who was facilitating didn't really understand how to. But at some point, just before the lunch break, I said to him that I felt that we needed to go to the glade as a group because it was calling us, and would he be open to it? So we marched up to the glade, and there was this Maori woman with us, and halfway there, her knee sort of gave out, and she said, "Oh, you guys go ahead because I'm just going to be hobbling behind." And I just said, "No, you have to take us in." And she looked at me like this, and I said, "You're the ancestors. They're your ancestors." And she goes, "Oh, but I can't walk as fast." And I said, so I just tuned into her, and I got the feeling that she needed to acknowledge, and I just asked her to acknowledge it, and then within an instant, her knee was free again. And so then we walked to the entrance, and then she just went, "Oh, wow, they're all here." She could see the ancestors, right? And I could see them too. Anyway, and so she did a karakia, which is like a little prayer song, went onto the land.
Karakia.
Yeah.
I like to say these words.
Are they Maori words? Yeah.
Maori.
Yeah.
Do you know Hone Edmonds?
No, I don't personally, no.
Yeah, I'm just curious.
But anyway, and so she asked the facilitator to say some words because their ancestors wanted to hear from him. So he said something appropriate. And at some point we were all joined hands, right? And then when we opened our eyes, she goes, "Oh my God, it's like we're in a temple." She goes, "Oh, I can see the temple like this." And in that moment, I understood what everyone's been saying about the 5D, is that when we come together and we join energetically through the heart, through the soul, our light bodies are the temples.
Yeah.
And so this idea of building an actual building for a temple is not valid anymore, because the temples are us.
Yeah.
So that's what I mean, when we understand that we are creators, that we're living in creator energy to be here to create the reality that we dream of or wish for, then everything can be and will be manifest.
Yeah. Yeah.
We don't need money.
No.
We don't need material things, because our perspective and our consciousness is now in a different space.
Yeah. 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 And Franco and somebody else mentioned that we're coming out of manifestation into creation. So you were talking about the voice, the mind, and it seems like that this whole thing is, of course, very present. I mean, there's no way to get around that. And in that presence, total presence, is that stillness that that the world as a whole is getting more accustomed to over the last year and a half, with the quarantines. I mean, think about the energetic impact of so many people, the vast majority being in certainly a substantial difference in the level of self-introspection, sitting in stillness and silence pre-COVID to today. Like the energy of that, the self-revelations, even for people that someone might say, "Oh, they're not awake." I mean, people doesn't mean if someone's not awake, it doesn't mean that they're not working on themselves.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah.
And even if they make a little progress, that's going to contribute to the collective expansion. So
Yeah. They may not speak to speak, but if
mhm.
they're, if they're living their walk and talk, that's different.
Mm.
I notice that with farmers, they're very grounded spiritual people, but in a different way.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
because they're very connected to the land.
And the kids, these kids, how they operate on what you were talking about. They operate on
Mm.
feeling.
Yes.
I don't want to do that.
Yeah, they're totally
You know?
connected to their because
Yeah.
your feelings are your compass.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So here's the thing too. When you're in stillness, because thought and thinking are two different things.
Mm. Yes.
Okay?
Yeah.
Two different things. Thinking is when your mind is out of control.
Mm-hmm.
Now, often when you're in that stillness, thoughts can drop in
Mm-hmm.
and then you'll start to question it.
Mm.
But if you allow yourself to be in the stream of the thought, it's what we call you're now streaming.
Yeah.
But as soon as you think, you take yourself out of the stream.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's,
Getting it.
that's something that people can play with. Is this a thought or is this me thinking?
Yeah. And how do you figure that out? Feel it.
Exactly, because your thought will always be connected to your whole body feeling.
Yeah. Yeah.
But as soon as you go into thinking, you're not feeling it anymore. That's why there's that confusion.
Well, the thinking comes with, you can't think in that manner that you're talking about without judging,
Yeah,
without
exactly.
judging, labeling, and so you're already at an imbalance perception.
Yes.
You're already. So now, since we're quantum creators and we've come into that understanding, what is it? Guard your thoughts, or I mean, it's really coming
Just to
down
be
to
aware
that.
of your thoughts. Yeah.
Yeah, it's coming down to that now. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah.
really.
And I'm just saying to people, if you get what we call a negative thought or judgment, you're responsible for your whole being. And if you're not the one telling it to shut up,
Mm-hmm.
it's not going to shut up. And, and like I say, you can say something very simple like, I heard that, but that's not my truth anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
And you give it a new perspective straight away.
Yeah, I remember you, and thank you for serving me. And it's like, I don't know, like saying goodbye to an old friend.
Exactly.
When you
Yeah.
just don't align anymore. You know what I mean?
Mm-mm.
And you just basically hug and say, see you later. Doesn't mean that it's not going to intersect again, because it certainly will. Maybe not in this realm. Maybe in another. Who knows?
Well, the thing is, if you give it the new perspective in the moment that you're saying, this is not my truth, thank you, this is not my truth, it's now like this, it doesnd need to intersect anymore. The only reason why it keeps coming around like a record player, is because you didn't replace it with some new thought or perspective. So, it just goes on auto, doesn't it? It's like, oh, yeah, this is what I think. This is what I think. This is what I think.
Yeah. That's probably a good way to consciously mantra your day, is to replace think with feel. Right?
Yeah. And this is when I'm in confusion, I'll be thinking, then I'll just go, how do I really feel? How do I really feel? Ask 3 times, and then I drop into my body, and it's like, oh, everything's okay.
You know what's amazing is I talk to people like you, and I can think of so many people, and their method isn't always the same, but their methodology to get to what you're describing in a moment where there is confusion or chaos or whatever, it's always very human. Like, put your hand on your heart and breathe, or say this to yourself, or it's always a very embodied human function. Like, you know what I mean? Like, when you look at it from the multidimensional experience and memory, it's like really slow. It's thick, it's heavy, but this embodiment thing into this degree of density, I mean, we're all pretty clued in as to what that, what the downside of that, so to speak, looks like. What we're not familiar with is what the upside looks like, and that's what we're hitting now.
Yeah, yeah. And, and for some people who have not been on the upside for a long time will find it very uncomfortable. And they'll try and pull back the downside to be with them.
Yeah. Well, that's the self-worth thing too.
Yeah. And so, therefore it's like we have to practice ourselves back into 5D.
Yeah. Yeah,
we practice ourselves out of 5D to be 3D.
Yeah, we got a little drunk and disorderly on this experiment. But you know what? Nothing's ever for nothing. Right?
Exactly.
Like what we're doing energetically is such a huge offering to the universe. It really is. So go ahead.
I was just going to say, because in Franco and quite a lot of your other people talked about the inner child. The inner child is the key.
Yeah.
It's the essence. And, the pattern comes from that stuck energy from that child state.
Yeah.
So energetically, that's where you have to connect with and work with. And I say to people, it's not about reliving anything like that, but it's just acknowledging the what was with the child. And this is actually modern day shamanism. This is actually what shamanism is bringing that energy that you keep pushing out to be the shadow to be embraced with love and compassion.
Well, and even to get to know it. You know what I mean? Like have a talk with it. I picked up some of this stuff from Morgan, obviously, over the years. And then there's another part to that. So you start having conversations with your 5-year-old or 10-year-old or 15-year-old, and you start to develop that
relationship.
And so there's a certain level of congruency that then affects the other inner parts of your inner child. But then there's another part of it, which she showed me like 3 years ago, which is contacting your future self, who's already got this figured out, whatever that may be that you're contemplating. And then, of course, the body, talking to an ache in the body, talking to any other aspect of yourself. But the fact that it's so close to home seems to be important. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah, it totally relates. And it's kind of like so it's understanding we are a vehicle that houses energy, vibrations. And when something is stressful or traumatizing, we have a tendency to push that energy out of the way so that we don't have to feel it. But that energy is our point of empowerment.
Yeah, that's right.
That's our point of creative expression. So when we are able to just bring it to us, and, a few months ago, there was a lot of plasma coming to the earth, right? And I was thinking, what is this plasma energy? What does it actually mean? And what does that do? And as I contemplated it, I realized that plasma is around the cell, and plasma helps to alchemize or, change, transform. And so what I was realizing was that, this plasma energy is actually what's really assisting us with the alchemical transformation that we need for our healing and our embodiment. And so with the inner child concept, I always ask people to use a cushion. And I said, you're talking to your feeling. You are not the feeling. Because a lot of people who think they are the feeling, they become the victim.
Yeah.
And then they can't get beyond it. But it's kind of like, if you look at the cushion, it's a small child.
Yeah.
And when you see a small child that is hurt, that is in trouble, what do you want to do?
Yeah.
You want to go and help them. You want to comfort them.
Yeah.
So therefore, in the space, now we've got the space between the feeling, yourself, the energy, yourself, is the plasma.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I was explaining to a client, and I said, and what's happening is that you're saying, this is anger, okay? I'm looking at anger, and you're just saying, you know what, anger? There is now love. So I'm putting love into the plasma. I'm putting compassion into the plasma. I'm putting acceptance, and you're all okay. Then you become one. Because it's like an alchem, it's like that chemistry.
Yeah. Well, it's like I just picture a kid playing with Play-Doh,
Yeah,
and we're
yeah,
actually
making
we're pliable. So these
that's
connections
right.
that what's happened to me a couple of times in the last few weeks. I can remember 2 times. So it was it was like the opposite. It was the adult. The Todd was like in that state of like confusion or whatever the case was, and the child came in
Mm,
and was like comforting the adult. It was weird. And it reminded me of a time my 2 daughters did it to me years ago, back in the early days of Soulogy. And I was crying on the couch, and they came down, and they just, this energy of like, you know what I mean? It's like this pure innocence that
mm.
just in itself is healing and aligning no matter what's going on. Right.
So here's another thing too I wanted to share, because it's really quite funny, but also really cool. So I had a client who's very she was doing her master's, and she was having to do analytical statistics papers, and she was just cursing about having to do them, And I said to her, I said, look, I said, why don't you invite your inner child to do them with you? Because the truth is, you already know. But what you're stressing out about is how to present it to someone that's going to accept it. And she wasn't a big believer in the inner child stuff, but I would give her these little exercises to do. And so anyway, she goes, okay. Okay, I'll give it a try like this, Anyway, 3 weeks later, she messaged me, and she passed with flying colors, plus with honors. And then she said, oh my God, I never realized my inner child was so smart. She even showed me things that I didn't even know.
Yeah, that's the multidimensional soul.
Exactly. That's the multidimensional aspect of ourselves.
Morgan does that. Morgan did what was it? A transpersonal counseling a few years ago when I first met her.
Yeah.
And she had the same type of experience, but it wasn't with the face of the inner child. It was the golden particles.
Oh,
And
yes.
so she had assignments, I guess, and she basically was having the same type of issue. And then she was basically told to picture it with the golden particles of creation falling on it. And she gets up the next morning and whips out like 3,000 words. And, I don't know what the time was, like half an hour or something. And the same thing happened. Every paper she turned in, she used that process. Every paper she turned in, she passed with honors, distinction. Yeah.
That's because you're reconnecting to your source.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Powerful conversation. It's good seeing you again.
Yes.
So how can people get in touch with you if they want to find you online and that type of thing?
I have a website, www.youngalyse. So it's just my name backwards, youngalyse.com. Yeah.
.com. Wow, that's
and
great.
I have this book, Talk to Me, which is about working with your energy, understanding your energy, and with the inner child, that sort of stuff.
Far out.
Yeah.
Far out. It's good
seeing you. Well, I appreciate you giving me the space and time.
Absolutely.
It's been fun.
Yeah. I wish that we could fit everybody in that, and I guess that eventually that's what the network will be. Everybody will have a voice and plug in and build their own. But I just want to tell you too, like there's so many people like yourself that, I see, I mean, we see you out there. We see your energy, we see your support. And, so I'm saying this to you and to those like you, really everybody, thank you for supporting us, what we're doing. Because there's no way. It's not us. It's not me. It's not me and Morgan. It's not, 4 people, 6 people. It's all of us.
It's all of us, yeah.
Yeah.
But I'm really grateful to you, Todd, for living on purpose.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I get that. I totally get that. So many things that are being said the last 3 days. It's the space between the letters and the words that's actually coming through, and I understand it. But if you ask me to explain it, I can't. Just the way it is. Hey, I love you. Thank you so much.
Love you.
Congratulations on your new house.
Thank you.
Congratulations.